Hello and welcome back to PolyToots. In today's lesson we're going to be taking a look at volumetric shader stuff for the Amplify shader editor. And this kind of thing is mostly used with particle systems, but not necessarily. I will be using them though. And so just to give a quick kind of example, you can kind of see what's happening on screen here with the interaction with light, and as our primary light is spinning around, it's changing how the particles here are receiving the light, which is pretty good. It's probably spinning a bit too fast, but there we go. And just to give you an example of what like a standard Unity particle material would do, so you get this instead. So this is what you can expect, for the default behavior. And so we're going to be making this, which is much nicer in my opinion. So yeah, I know I've been rambling on for a little bit already, but before we begin the tutorial, I would just like to give a shout out to a guy who I only know as the creator, or C-Creator. His Twitter is Caillou66. I don't think he was born in 66. But essentially he created this shader. It was using Amplify again, but he uses a custom expression which has basically some code in it. So this one is actually correct, I think. And my goal was basically just to try to recreate this as best as possible using only nodes. So, it might be a bit of a mess. It's not going to be for everyone. There's going to be some stuff that I would certainly be interested to hear how other people would do it. But anyway, this is what I did. So let's just kind of run through that, and yeah, I'll show you. Alrighty, so as usual, just to kick things off, we will create a Amplify shader and just a surface shader. Call it, something sensible, and open it up. And before we get started on this, just going to do a little bit of prep stuff. So I'm going to create our material first, and let's just put that on our plane here. And in the shader itself, in the blend mode, we'll first set these to transparent render type and transparent render Q. I believe that's it actually. So yeah, we can just go ahead basically and just start creating some stuff. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to offset our UVs based on the light direction. And I remember trying this years ago, but I was just using normal maps because I thought, well, that's like the easiest way to get something to be, based off of light direction. But the solution actually turned out to be a lot more simpler, which is annoying. We're going to start with a texture object, not a texture sample, like an actual texture object. We'll call this, let's say, main text. And we're going to create some UVs. Oh, and I'll hit the P key so we can see the previews of what's going on. So it's going to make this a lot easier. Let's just feed the text output here into the text input of our texture coordinates. This is essentially the same as using the reference on this, so we can change that to use the reference of our main texture. So either way, you can either just set it here or just plug that in, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to be using like a lot of registers to begin with, which seems a bit strange, I know, but this is a big shader, and the only way to really get through this in a good amount of time is to kind of just set things up now so that we don't have to recreate things later. Yeah, so we have our register, which I've called UVs, which is basically just some very simple UVs. And now we'll get a texture sample, and we will feed these UVs. You can either feed it from here or from here, it doesn't actually matter. And we will put in the texture from the texture. Oh, come on, there we go. And since we're here, we might as well choose a default texture just so we can save ourselves a bit of time later. What was it called? Splat? Yeah. So just a basic circle, easiest for testing. And we'll get another register here, and we'll output the alpha of our sample texture into that, and we'll just call this main texture. Okay, let's get all these, and we'll just comment this just main texture. So that's our UVs and the texture done. So now let's move on to the light direction. And for that, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can do like a view.light setup, but I think either way you kind of have to convert it to a tangent. But I'm just going to go with what I know for now. So we're going to get the world space light direction, and we'll just multiply that by a world tangent matrix. So it's basically just taking it from world space into tangent space, which is good because we only want it to have an effect like within our UVs of our texture. My mouse is just wigging out. Yeah, and that's it. That is basically it. That's I mean, not for the entire shader. I don't want to get your hopes up like that. So yeah, get a register, call this one light direction, and bada bing, bada boom, comment this. Okay, so now I guess now's a good time to actually try to do something where we can see what's actually happening. So we'll just start with a get, and we'll get our light direction, and we'll multiply that by, for now we'll just use a value, give it a property, just call it offset, and we'll plug that into there. And then we want to add in the UVs, which are just these very simple UVs. So we'll just use another get and get these UVs. And the reason that we're doing this like this and keeping everything kind of separated like this from the get-go is right now we're basically working on our first sample, which will be, you know, a string of nodes along here, and we're just going to be copy pasting that down, you know, like 3 or 4 times. So if you're starting this and, you know, you're just trying to hook the UVs into here and whatever, then it's just going to be an absolute mess. So that's why we're doing it this way. So yeah, we're going to add the UVs, we're offsetting our light direction. Okay, yeah, so we want to get our texture object again. And the reason that we want to do this will become clear in a second, but the first thing we want to do is change this to a fetch, and it still has the property name, clicked off, the property name of the duplicate, which is main text 1, which means it will actually, on the material, it will, in fact, let me just show you. Oh wait, it's not going to work because it's not plugged into anything. Well, you know when you create a texture object and then on the actual material there's an area where you put the texture in. We've just made 2 of these basically, but we only actually want one, which we just want one to reference the other. So get that unlock icon off, and I think this is how you do it, at least it works sometimes. I'm going to remove the 1 and then hit the lock. And no, it doesn't work now. I don't actually, Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It just seems like sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. Yeah, so that's a no. I don't get it. Like I've set it to fetch instead of create. I'll be back in a second when I work this out. Oh wait, no, okay, so for some reason now it has actually fixed itself. I literally did not do anything. I don't know if that's like a bug or what, but yeah, so now these have the same property name, these 2, so they will, one will be the original, the creator, and one will be the one that's referencing it. So anyway, to carry on, now we get a texture sample, and we'll plug that into there, and our UVs into here. And now the reason that we have this, you know, a texture object here, and a texture sample here, and this, and this object, and this sample, what is my mouse doing? And then this register is pretty much because we need to subtract this image from itself. But one has the UVs, which are being offset like this, and the other one is not. But you can't subtract a texture object. So if I do that, Amplify says no. So what we want to do is just get the main texture that we have up here, and so that was main texture, put that into A, and then we'll subtract it with this texture, well, the alpha of that texture. In fact, oh, did we do the alpha? We did do the alpha, yeah. So now we have 2 of the same texture, but one of them is being offset and they're subtracting from each other. So you get that kind of thing. So, you know, peekaboo, nice moon. Yeah, so it's pretty cool, but this is only giving us the light information, and we want to bring back some of the original base values so that we can also see the 0 side essentially, which would be the shadow, because we have the light here, we need to see the shadow. So easiest way to do that is just add by a value of 0.5, and now that is just like magic basically. So we come here with our offset, start doing this, and that's it. So you can see it's heading off in an angle, and the UVs are based off of our light direction. So this will actually rotate depending on our light position. So pretty cool. Yeah, so let's just give this a little look actually while we're here. So we'll register this and we'll call it, well, this is our first sample, so we'll call it sample 01, and we'll stick that in there. and then we'll come over to our albedo, get sample 01. And then let's see what this looks like. So here we are, and if we just, change our offset, you can see what it's doing. Great kind of fakery for, like an old school bump map, I suppose. So if we just try to find, where's our light? Our light's here, kind of pointing off that way, and if we just rotate it around, you can see what it's doing. What I can do, since I'm pretty sure that's just like the exact opposite of what we want, let's come back up here. I'm going to introduce a 1- into here. So now it will actually be the right way around, depending on, obviously which way your quad is facing, but by default it was wrong. And then for good measure, I will saturate. In fact, I'll saturate afterwards, because what I'm actually going to do is get a lerp, and this is essentially how I was able to blend all of my samples together in a way that made it look correct, but it's the strongest weak point, if that makes any sense. What I mean is, I'm pretty sure there's a way to do this that is not using lerps, but we'll see. So we're going to lerp our main texture with the 1- that we have here at a value of 0.5. Make sure you're using 0.5, because if it's 0, then it's only going to use our main texture, and if it's 1, then it's only going to use the original lerp here. So let's go 0.5, and let's put that back down into here. And the reason that I'm doing this, let's tidy that up a little bit, is because at the end I'm going to be lerping again, and I'm lerping everything together. And rather than lerping all of the main textures twice for basically every sample, or once for every sample, now I don't need to bother because they're already included. So yeah, so that's pretty much it, I do believe. So let's grab this and we'll comment that and call it just sample 01. And we haven't really changed much except for how it looks. We have dropped out our shadow, so now it's just the highlights. Let's grab our, where is our material? There we go. So it's just moving off there. And now let's come up here, and we want to basically introduce more of these so that we have a like a certain number of steps, basically, so it's overlapping each other. And we're going to first turn this offset into a register. So let's get rid of him, come up here, get a register node, and we'll just call this offset, and then register, sorry, not register, get, and offset. Okay, so now our samples are pretty standalone. We can copy paste them and control their values elsewhere. So if you wanted, you could even comment that and just call it offset, just so you know. Yeah, so let's start by, ooh, didn't want to do that. I wish Amplify would fix that actually, because whenever you copy paste entire groups, you have to learn to kind of go out of the view a bit and then paste, because if it pastes over another group, then just all hell breaks loose. So anyway, let's get sample 02, and we'll rename the sample here at the end to 02. Okay, so pretty cool. But at the moment, obviously, if we were to offset this other sample, it's only going to move at the exact same rate as the first, because we're only using the that standard offset there. So what I'm going to do is, let's make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, we're going to just move all of this across by a little bit, because we'll introduce another multiply, put that in there, and we'll multiply by 0.5, which is the exact same as a divide by 2, but cheaper for some reason that I don't know. So yeah, let's just hook that into there. So again, I think I've mentioned in previous tutorials, but if you would rather, you can just have constant floats fed into these things, just so you can easily kind of see them. So I could call this like 0.5, then at a glance I can see where it is. But I mean, we're going to have a lot of nodes here, so I'm just going to put the information into the actual multiply B slot here, and it should be all good. So now let's grab our offset, and we'll have a look at these two values here. And so you can see that they're moving at different rates, which is exactly what we want. And that's fine, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. So let's have a look. Oh no, wait, we need to blend them together. So just as a little test. Be a bit messy for now, so I'll loop. Might as well keep this one, so we'll just call this like all samples, because eventually it will be all samples. And then we'll change our get here to the all samples instead of the sample one. You can see what's happening. We are getting, you know, that little bit of an offset here, which is pretty cool. That's essentially the same behavior we want when we want this multiplied by, you know, a few times, because the more samples you have, the smoother the whole thing will be. So yeah, I'm going to get rid of just this loop here, which for now will break everything. But let's just complete these samples. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these, I'm going to copy paste them a few times and make sure to rename the comment that you make on the group, and also change the sample name at the end. So, you know, the next one will be 3, then 4, then 5, and I'll only do a couple. I don't want to go too crazy. Okay, so once you have all of these, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, everything now is just dividing the original offset by 2, and yeah, you'd be correct in that. So we don't actually want our original offset anymore in the from sample 2 and onwards. So let's just get rid of these. And even though I said like I was going to avoid, you know, the whole spaghetti type thing of having like the UV stuff coming down here and yada yada yada, the best way that I found to actually do what I want is to unfortunately have this just from the multiplied. So we have an original value here, which is our offset, which we are dividing by 2, and then we want that value to be divided by 2. So wait, not in the B slot. I think I'm even confusing myself, but either way, from sample 2 and onwards, the original value is just being divided intermittently. No, not intermittently, sequentially, arrayally. I don't know. Either way, so we're going to do, yeah, this. So this is going to come down and just keep dividing. No, no, that's what you want to hear. This shouldn't be a vector 3. I think what we want is actually to get the offset. So we'll have this as we had it before. So this multiply here is the same as this multiply here. We've introduced a new one. That's why we got this vector 3, sorry, because we're pulling in from the light direction. Yeah, we don't want to do that. So for sample 01, my apologies, that is the offset into the original multiply by light direction. That's all fine. In sample 02, it's the offset into our divide, which is a multiply by half, and then multiply by light direction. And then from that point onwards, I feel sorry for someone who's just listening to this, but from that point onwards, you just multiply by half the values down the line. So now this should be fine. So yeah, so we're seeing now just vector 1s, vector 1, vector 1. So that should be all good. And if we were to move our offset just a bit, let's say 0.1. So we have value here, a value here, a value there, and a value there. So they're getting sort of smaller and smaller, which is good. Let's make that a little bit more obvious by maybe just moving it. So you can see our first value is moving by a lot, and then it just gets slower and slower and slower. So they're kind of just trailing behind, always by an even amount. Pretty cool. So now let's combine them all together, basically. And again, I should probably mention that I am down for a better solution to this. I think what I'm doing here with the lerp is it's not the best. It's the closest I've been able to get it to what I want, but just by using this lerp with an alpha of half over the main texture with our subtracted one, we're basically sacrificing like 50% of our strength, like right away, like boom, instantly gone. But it's the only way that I can get it to work. So yeah, it is what it is. So sample 1, and then sample 2, and I'll be back when this is done. Okay, so I think I'm about to make programmers cry, but here we go. So we're gonna get a whole bunch of loops, immediately set the alpha of this one to 0.5, just so we don't forget. And we'll loop this one with that one, and then copy paste, and just keep going down the line like this until your parents call you to tell you that they're not proud of you. Okay, and so then once you've had a good old cry, let's just hook that in here. So this is our all samples register, and this is our all samples get. Let's just have a look what it looks like. So we're here, and if we increase this, yeah, it's pretty weak, but it's there. That's fine. I know it looks not fine, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're gonna do for this, and I've come prepared. So let's move on to what I would call final tweaks or something like that. Basically, I try to think of names for all of my groups. So this one would be, I guess, all samples. And not the best place to put it, but we'll just keep it there. So now we're going to have a whole new bunch of stuff, and it's going to start with all of our samples. Well, no, I tell a lie. It's going to start with a vector 1, which we will call contrast. And it's going to be a property, it's going to be a slider, default value of 0. You can put it as 1, but you'll probably see that things will go a bit weird. And so from this point, we want to actually add, oh, come on now. We're going to add the samples. So let's get all samples. Do that, and basically this will just do the opposite of what we want, but we'll cover that in, well, cover that right now basically. We'll do a 1 minus in there, and so now we'll do that. And so what this is going to do is it's going to basically push out our edges and just make them nice and crisp, which is what, you know, I want a contrast to do. And then I'm going to multiply that whole thing just by another vector or float. I always say the both, and this one's going to be just brightness. And I think if the creator, the guy whose shader that I'm copying, is watching this, he's probably cringing so hard, and I don't blame him. So we'll keep that at 1. And now I want to do something with the light color, but not yet. I think we'll first just throw in a saturate for good measure, and then we will register this, and we'll call this one combined, I suppose, which is similar to all samples, but oh well. So then for our albedo here, we'll come down and we'll change that to combined. And let's just have a look at what this looks like. It's doing some stuff. Don't know if, well, maybe from video compression, I don't know how easy that is to see, but there are these offset lines, and we have contrast. Maybe that will help you see it a little bit better. Oh, not like that. Bring that down so we have the brightness. Okay, pretty cool. While we're here, let's just we need an alpha. So before we get into that, I want to show you why we need to do what we're about to do. So let's get away from our quad for now. I'll keep it in the scene, but let's grab, let's say, volumetric. Can't remember which one this was. Hopefully it's the tube one. Yeah, beautiful. Let's put this shader on it. Obviously doesn't look quite right. What's this? Yeah, I think there's a bit of a bug. I hope that hasn't broken or anything. Whenever you undo in the editor and then come back into the window, it seems to think that you did an undo in here as well, but I didn't. So yeah, hopefully, what was the last thing we did? Combined? Yeah, probably. Hopefully everything's fine. If we were to just, let's say, get the alpha, which is actually the main texture that we have now. If we were to get this main texture and put that in our opacity, you can see that it does the job that we want it to do. But now with our, let's get rid of, let's say 10, just so it's a little bit quicker. If we start playing around with the, let's change this to a constant. If we start playing around with like the alpha here, nothing's happening. Similar with the color. So for anyone that's watched any of my previous tutorials, in fact one of my earliest ones, then you already know the answer to this, but in order for us to have color and alpha be affected by the particle systems, we need to use vertex coloring. And it's incredibly simple, but let's just get a vertex color, and we'll multiply this. I think I've still left the particle system running. Yep, my machine is slow. Multiply this by, I mean, we could, it's right there, we could just grab that, but in the interest of being organized, let's, what's it called? Main texture. So yeah, we'll multiply these two together and we will register this as alpha, basically. So yeah, comment that and call it alpha. And just because it makes no sense for that to be so close, like we could have just plugged that into there. We might as well just justify the whole thing and put that over there, because see, now that would be super lame if that was like that. So we win. Oops, my bad. We didn't change this, so this is still using main texture. So alpha, change that. Oh, wait. Yeah, sorry. We absolutely do not want RGBA in here. We only want the alpha channel for the vertex color. I don't know why the RGBA wouldn't work, because it includes the alpha, but you know, it is what it is. So let's just do this and have a look. Okay, so now we can immediately see, because I have the color over lifetime, I can already tell you that it is working. But just for proof positive, there you go. 0 on the alpha there, 0 there. So we still have the color, which doesn't do anything, and we will get to that right immediately. Oh, let me pause my particles. There we go. I need a better computer. So yeah, we have all of this stuff here, my final tweaks, and we can just multiply. In fact, I'll leave the saturate at the end, always a good idea. We'll just stick that in there. Come on now. So we'll grab vertex colors again, and for this one we will use the RGBA. And yeah, again, I don't really need to show you, but based on the mess that happened last time, I probably should just check that it actually works. So yeah, well, there we go. There's our colors. Everything is working. Yeah, choose red, it's red. Choose pink, it's pink. Choose blue, it's blue. That's always beneficial. Okay, so we're nearly approaching the end here. We really only have to cover some particle stuff as well, but I will put in some, come on now, some light color stuff. And the way that I've done it in mine, it's not the same as the way that the creator, I really should just learn his name. That would be so much easier. But yeah, the way that he did his was quite interesting, but it was scary and I didn't understand it, so I don't just want to copy his just for the sake of it, but I'm pretty sure the way that I do this is wrong, so heads up there. But all I'm doing here is I'm just, in fact it has to be wrong, because color multiply, I'm just multiplying a color here. What I want is I want to multiply intensity, and then I want to multiply that intensity by the color. That should be correct, I do believe. Because if you were to just multiply a color by a number, then you would just get a different color, which is not really what you want. What you want is to always have that color, but to increase the intensity of it. So I hope that makes sense. Let's call this something like light influence. Default value, did I do 0.01? I can't remember doing that. I don't know, 0.1, that'll do. Yeah, so we have this, and we'll just add that right before our coloring here. Don't know if it makes sense to go afterwards. No. Would it? Maybe, probably. I don't know, you try it, tell me. Yeah, so let's grab all of this, comment that, and final tweaks. And the last thing I kind of want to do is, it's a bit of a cheat. In fact, let's hold off for now. Let's just continue with this. So let's come down here. We have our offset, which hard to kind of tell what's going on there, right? Grab our thing. So yeah, offset. You can see it just changes our samples. Well, it doesn't change the samples. It kind of goes through them. It's pretty soft. Kind of nice. We do have some contrast, so we can like really crisp out those edges, and we can increase the brightness as well, which doesn't really work if the contrast is on, but I kind of like it. That's why I made it like that. It means you can actually like really boost those edges, or you can just use the brightness without contrast, and that will just give you some brightness. But yeah, so we'll leave that at that, and let's go back here and let's give ourselves a smoke texture, and we'll spawn, I don't know, 80. Maybe a little bit less. I am recording, might get a bit chuggy. Yeah, okay, so let's see, maybe a little bit of contrast. Yeah, that should be okay. So let's have a look at our light. I think I'll keep this here, because for now we don't need it so much, but just want to show you, if we rotate this, then we can see that our, you know, our particles are being changed based on the light direction, and it is the correct way, because you can see if I go over to the right there, oh, that's the left. Well done. Then we are being lit more from this side. The effect is quite subtle, but I think it's quite nice. One thing that we don't have is any light really coming through on the back end. So if we were to do something like this, I mean, it kind of works, but it looks a little bit weird. So my little, I guess, little trick is, where is this now? Is just adding in some transmission, just a tiny bit. We'll do 0.1. Render path change to forward only, because it only works in the forward rendering mode. That might be a deal breaker for some of you, in which case just don't use transmission. And so now let's come back and bring this guy down. Let's enable our skybox so we can actually see what's going on. And I will make it the dark one, just so it's a lot easier to see what's actually going on. And I mean, I hope that this just works, because if it doesn't, then I've got to go back and find an issue somewhere, which just means the entire recording has been messed up. So no, okay, so that's lit from the front, and that's, yeah, it's being changed from the back. Very, very cool. Yeah, I do like that, and I do have some other lights in here. I mean, it just looks so nice compared to like the default standard particles, I think. It's a bit weird if you change angles too quickly, but that's the same even for standard particles, so I guess that's just a Unity thing. But yeah, I mean, that's just, I like that, I really do. And again, if we just chuck on like, I think it was the standard particle here, using the exact same texture. I mean, look at that, that's your standard one. You could probably make this a little bit better. Maybe they have, you know, they have a couple of different particle shaders, but I think, you know, our one is the winner chicken dinner. So yeah, that's I think that's pretty much it. I'm sure there's something else I was supposed to mention, but brilliant. That's good, nice. But yeah, for now that will be everything. The last thing that I will mention is, I think I've encountered a bit of a Unity bug, actually. Let's just close this. We don't actually need this anymore. And it's to do with the particle systems and how these things are spawned. Because you might have noticed I have this 3D start rotation here, and I've just got 3, 4, 5 in the second one of the Z, which doesn't actually make any sense now that I think about it. But it was the only way that I could actually get it to work. But then once it did work, it kind of just fixed itself. And then there's also some other issue where at first I was using the billboard, which just uses quads basically that always face you, but that was causing like a lot of problems, and so I had to actually use a quad as a mesh, and then render alignment I think I didn't change. I think that was just set to view. But then I was getting like some weird stuff where, you know, where you move the camera and the particles just roll around like crazy. And if you change this to a billboard, there is actually this allow roll, and that was off by default. And I had to, I don't know why this makes any sense, but I had to turn this one on to allow the roll, and then go back to change it to mesh, where that option doesn't even exist anymore. And then for some reason it just worked. So, I mean, I can imagine I'm going to get a lot of comments from people who have put this on the particle system, and things are just being weird. And honestly, I think I can't recreate it right now. I haven't been able to since I encountered the issue. But yeah, I do think it's a little Unity glitch. So if you are having these issues, play around with the start rotation. You know, mess around with just everything, really, everything to do with rotation of quads and how the quads are rendered. Just change all of these things until it eventually works, and then you can change it back and it will work fine. So I think now, even if I change it to billboard, by default this would not work for me at all in the slightest. It was a mess, whereas now it does work, but I keep it on mesh just because I don't want it to ever break. Okay, so that was quite a bit more rambling than usual. Let's just hit that play button again. I thank you for watching, as always. I hope this has been good, you know, and fun. Yeah, I hope you've learned something. I know that I haven't really covered a lot in much detail, and that was just because of the sheer size of this particular shader. I don't really want to be doing long tutorials. I say that I'd be surprised if this one comes in under an hour, but there we go. Yeah, so I'm just gonna stop now. I'll see you in the next one, which will either be, I hope not, like recreating this in shader graph. But otherwise, I really want to get my teeth into Unity's new particle visual node graph. Either I've just got a terrible memory, or they've named that something just completely forgettable, because I can never remember the name of it. But their new particle thingy anyway. Yeah, I'd like to have a play around with that. So yeah, I will see you in the next one. Not that anyone's even reached it to this point, so I'm just talking to myself now, actually. All right, toodaloo.